Hello, everyone. I'm Sara Pini, Deputy Head of the President Office at the European People's Party. On behalf of the EPP, welcome to this year's first episode of our EPP Family Talks. Today, we are very pleased to have with us Lídia Pereira, President of YEPP, which is the youth organization of the EPP, also member of the European Parliament, for a special episode of the EPP Family Talks entirely dedicated to what's on everyone's lips today, and hopefully soon in everyone's body, the vaccines. Dear President, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us, speaking with us today. First of all, Happy New Year, or at least a better New Year, as you said. Although we can say that 2020 also ended on a positive note with the first doses of this COVID-19 vaccine procured by the European Commission being delivered to all EU countries right after Christmas, nice Christmas gift, and then member states promptly starting their vaccination campaign. So we can say we can finally see the light at the end of the tunnel, and maybe we will soon be able to turn the page on what has been one of the most difficult moments of EU history. But we still have a long way to go to getting there. And beside the challenging logistics of producing, distributing, and administering the vaccine to hundreds of millions of people, we have to overcome an additional obstacle. We have to convince enough European citizens to get vaccinated so that we can achieve herd immunity. And to this end, YEPP, in cooperation with the EPP and also our group in the European Parliament, has been working on a campaign called Vaccines Work. So to start, can you tell us more about this initiative?
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for inviting us to join this initiative. And I'm very glad to be coordinating with the EPP, with the EPP group, this initiative. Well, indeed, the current COVID-19 pandemic has shaken the entire globe, particularly the European Union, and it put a lot of challenges to our economy, to our healthcare systems. And so in the last 8 months, the EU member states have actively, and I think it's important to underline, collectively worked towards combating and mitigating the effects of the pandemic. We are witnessing the first days of the rollout of the vaccination campaign. But at the same time, unfortunately, we start seeing the rise of anti-vaccination campaigns to combat the rollout of this vaccine against coronavirus. And therefore, this is the reason why we, as the youth of the European People's Party, we want to address this issue. And I would like to remind everyone that actually back in 2019 at the EPP Congress that was held in Zagreb, YEPP passed a resolution which then became a EPP resolution on improving the vaccination rates and combating disinformation. And where we called for campaigns on national and European-wide level to increase vaccination rates. And so I think it is, and I can tell from my personal experience, I was not expecting so many people questioning the effectiveness and the importance of vaccines in general, and in particular the COVID-19 vaccination. I think there's a lot of mistrust due to the fact that this vaccine was achieved in such record time. But at the same time, I think it is people should be relaxed because there was a lot of research. There was the global alliance. There is the global alliance for vaccines, Gavi, and so I think all researchers, companies, member states, governments, and the important role of the European Commission led to the COVID-19 vaccine. And I think we can trust that this can finally be the mark to change the chapter of the last 10 months.
Thank you. Yeah, because it's important to note that not everyone who hesitate in getting vaccinated is crazy conspiracy theories who believe that the vaccination is just a part of a big plan to implant a microchip in people. There are people who are just maybe a bit concerned about this vaccine, as you said, has been achieved in record time. So we just must reassure them. But this is not new. Vaccine, despite their proven success, have always met a certain amount of resistance among the population. And government throughout the years have resorted to different solutions, from a simple awareness campaign to compulsory vaccination and everything in between. What is, in your opinion, the most effective strategy?
I think it is very important to educate people since an early stage of what is exactly a vaccine and what does a vaccine do to our bodies. Um, I mentioned earlier that my personal experience. I have a lot of friends that so from this we are more or less the same age, that actually do not trust the vaccine, but I think it's mostly because they actually do not know exactly how the vaccine work. And we hear often comments like, I'm not going to take the flu vaccine because every time I take the flu vaccine I get sick. But the truth is that when we have the vaccine, there are antibodies being injected in our body, and this is the reason why that we feel sick, even though we are not sick. It's the reaction to the virus from our body to respond to the fact that there's a strange body in invading our metabolism. But this is our bodies responding, and so this is positive. It means it doesn't mean that we are sick. It means that we are developing and strengthening our immune system to combat any strange virus. And this happens, and I've been questioning my friends, like, where do you get these ideas from? I know it's just the way I feel every time I take the vaccine. But this is not true. So I think it's very important to educate people in a very early stage of our lives, and also throughout our life. We don't talk a lot about science. We have to talk more about science because, for example, when we see the astronauts going to the moon, or when there's any space mission, there's a lot of things that are being tested outside the world to see whether or not they can be effective. And a lot of things are related to medicines, are related also to vaccines and so on. So I think there's a gap to be filled when it comes to speak out about science, the importance of science on our daily lives, on our daily routine, that I think could actually inform more people. Because what we are going to witness more and more in the coming months is disinformation. We saw already in recent weeks, and in particular in Portugal, where I am at the moment, there's a lot of movements that are actually questioning, also movements that are among doctors and so on, that are questioning everything that is happening. Should we use or not the protective equipment, masks, the use of masks? Maybe it's not necessary. Like, we have to trust science. And I think therefore it's important first to speak more about science, to talk more about science, and to explain to people what is a vaccine and how does a vaccine work in ourselves. And also reminding that vaccines were so important to eradicate very difficult diseases worldwide. I'm thinking about polio, diphtheria, etc. Like, there's so many of them. So I think it is very important to inform, and I'm very happy that we, as a center right party, that we can lead this discussion. and that we can deliver to people to make sure that they are well informed about the positive sides of getting a vaccine, and also, clarifying any myths that there might be still on the use of vaccines.
Yeah, you're right. So, of course, a politician, as you said, play an important role. We have seen the anti-vax movement gaining momentum in parallel with the rise of populist parties, especially when they are in government and they can actively support their narratives. Sometimes also because of the lack of action, it can also help, because if you don't trust what your government is doing, you will turn toward anyone who offers you solutions, as simple or deceitful as they might be. So here you said about the role of
if I may, just to add a couple of numbers that I think it are or might be important for people to understand the magnitude of what we are talking about. In order for the COVID vaccine in particular to be effective, experts and researchers are saying that 70% of the population has to be vaccinated to achieve group immunity. But at the same time, when we look at how people see the vaccines, we see that, for example, in Poland, there are a lot of negative responses towards vaccines. Like in a survey, a very recent one, apparently only 56% of the people would get a COVID-19 vaccine. But also in France, with only 59% stating that they would take the vaccine, even if it's proven to be effective, safe, and so on. So there's a wave of skepticism around vaccines in general, but in particular to COVID-19. And therefore, it is very, very important that everyone is well aware of what is at stake. Like, if we don't take the vaccine, we might well keep staying at home, not traveling. Our freedom will be kept as somehow somewhat restricted. So I think we have to look at those at that side of not taking action and not informing, which is not good for anyone. It's not good for the economy, and definitely not good for the society as a whole.
And speaking of survey, I also seen recently some quite alarming surveys about the diffusion of vaccine hesitancy, or also about conspiracy theory among the European teachers, which is quite worrying. So do you think that maybe it's time for young people to educate their elders?
It could be, and I can give you a good example of that. Like when I was in primary school, I was actually the one who brought the concept of recycling back to home. So I basically taught my parents how to do the recycling, how to recycle, and I see it as a very positive way of dealing with this issue. But I also think that it is fundamentally important to inform our teachers, inform everyone, running like a very a wide reach campaign across the EU. And it was actually what we were calling in our resolution what EPP defends. There's been, like, on the one hand, the EU was vital. The role of EU was vital to find the COVID vaccine. But now there's the challenge to get people vaccinated. So let's also join our efforts and address this and run a European-wide campaign in the attempt of informing people of tranquilizing, in the sense that people can trust the vaccine. But indeed, it is a problem. But I see that the younger generations can, where I also, as I mentioned, where I see a lot of skepticism, but I think they can also play a positive role, as we are doing at the moment, in raising awareness and making an impact that matters in the sense of making everyone informed.
Thank you. And what about media? And I'm thinking especially about social media, because we know that they are the main source of information for many of our citizens. How can they help in stop the spreading of fake news and raising awareness about the importance of vaccines?
Well, social media it has a lot of positive things, and as well as you rightly mentioned, negative ones, which is the spread of fake news. But the way we can deal with this is using the same instruments, the same tools that we have available, and let's say counterfight, but counterfight in the right way and in the positive way. And I think this is done through defining a strategy, defining our public, defining the audience, and get to the people. Because if we politicians, and we have an extra responsibility in this process, because we are the people that or our voters trusted to represent them, and so we have to comply with that responsibility. And I think part of that responsibility is defining a strategy, communicating, in a very simple way, but in a trustworthy way, what is at stake. So let's use the tools we have available. If there are fake news, we will make sure that whatever we communicate is reliable, and we cannot ignore that the social media can also make a difference, and use also the traditional media. But I think here, and I actually had a very interesting conversation with some friends, some American friends, on their actions towards the election of Joe Biden as the president elect. It's called the Project Lincoln, and they actually told me, like, we have to use the tools we have available, but we can use it in a trustworthy and reliable way. So let's use them. Let's use social media. Let's use everything we have available to counterfight the spread of fake news, the spread of false information. And I think here in the vaccines chapter, it's also how we can deal with it doesn't we can keep highlighting um, the dangers that are in social media, but we have to use it. So let's use it in a positive and comprehensive way, making sure that we communicate science-based information, that you communicate in a clear and easy way to everyone to understand. This is how we fight misinformation.
So it's more up to us to input the right
Yeah,
content instead of just waiting
I
for
think
social
so.
media to regulate themselves.
Exactly. I think we have to, because as many there's a lot of filters being applied in Twitter and in Facebook and so on. But every time we block some groups, those groups are going somewhere
Mm.
else and to places which we probably don't know. So the way to fight it is to apply the same reasoning, but using credible information.
Thanks you very much. We have seen this time, for the first time, the EU having a centralized strategy for the development and then the distribution of the vaccine. What are, in your opinion, also as an MEP, the main benefits of this common approach, and maybe what are its limits?
Well, I think it was the work of the European Commission in the last 10 months was very important one. And I think every or a vast majority of Europeans recognize in the European Commission the success that was possible to achieve in the last days of December 2020, which was the vaccine. And I think the work the work that the European Commission did in negotiating intensely to build a diversified portfolio of vaccines for the EU at fair prices was is something to be underlined as a European success. But also before that, before the vaccine, there was I see like there were three phases so far of the pandemic. The first one, where everyone didn't, or a majority of people, governments, and so on, did not know exactly what was going on. So there was a lot of people were afraid, closing up borders, not no coordination whatsoever. And then the European Commission stepped in and said, okay, we have to manage this in a centralized manner to make sure that every member state has what it needs to fight the virus, to fight the coronavirus. And so this is the second phase. Is the phase where the Commission stepped in and said, okay, we have to use our instruments. We have to use the EU civil protection mechanism, making sure that every hospital has the necessary equipment, and so to provide for member states to make sure that there were not, a lot of fights for the necessary material that was needed at the time. And this is the turning point where everything started to be more coordinated. And I think this was when we could see that, okay, now things are coordinated not only on a technical level but also at a political level. And this is something that I think was important, and it was under the leadership of President von der Leyen, that should be underlined as I wouldn't say a victory, but something positive to be remembered. And then there's the third phase of the pandemic, when the Commission started to negotiate all the portfolios of the different vaccines that were under research, which I think it's also it's something remarkable, because the main intention was to have the European continent vaccinated as soon as possible, but making sure that the procedures and all the health and the security safe mechanisms were applied. But of course, the Commission played a very important role in this. And I think we are going to see in the coming weeks if the strategy was if it was successful or not. So far, the impression we have is that it was. So I think it is very relevant, and it was the right way to do things, because it's the same on, if I may say, on climate change and environment in general. Like, the virus doesn't know borders. So the European Commission saw this, like, okay, we saw the pandemic as knowing no borders as well. So we have to find a way of coordinating our efforts, making sure that we deliver for everyone. So I think it was a crucial role. It's not yet done. We still have a lot of challenges ahead of us, but I think the strategy from the Commission and from the EU member states in the end succeeded, and it was, I think, a good preparation for what can happen in the future, because certainly this is not the last pandemic that we are going to face. In 2012, there are already a lot of people that could see a pandemic coming. So this is a lesson learned, and we'll see how it is going to happen, the rollout of the vaccination. But so far, I see the role of the European Commission as a very positive one, particularly when it took over the responsibility of the coordination among member states, and I think that was a turning point in the management of the pandemic.
Yeah. So let's hope we will soon have access to the vaccine as soon as possible. So one last question, because we usually conclude our EPP family talks by asking our guests if they have a book, a movie, or a series to recommend to our audience. Maybe in this case, we should also include websites or documentaries. So beside, of course, the campaign that has been led by YEPP, is there anything else you would suggest to our audience to get reliable information or to debunk myths and misconceptions about vaccines?
Absolutely. If people want to know more about vaccines in general, I think visiting the website of the Global Alliance for Vaccination, Gavi, it's a good source of information, but also exploring a bit more the website of the European Commission. There's a lot of new information published on a daily basis related to the development of the coronavirus pandemic. But in what regards vaccination, I think it's also to consult the national authorities on the matter, because one thing we have still to bear in mind is that the health policy is under the responsibility of member states. So the action taken by the European Commission was indeed limited, but was vital, as I explained, to deliver for every and each European citizen. But consulting, since that it is still the health policies are still something under the responsibility of national governments, it is important to consult national authorities' websites, getting information from there, because we know that the vaccine is not mandatory, but we have to make sure that we are taking a responsible. We are adopting the responsible attitude of taking the vaccine. But for that, and if we are not comfortable, it's better to get more information and consulting the national authorities' websites, national healthcare systems websites is important, because we can understand better what is this vaccine about, and also pay attention to what is being communicated by the traditional media outlets, because we were discussing about the social media, but there's still or people can be confident of the information communicated through the traditional media outlets. There's still a filter applied from the journalists, which can be relevant to check facts. And so I see, at least here in Portugal and also in the European media outlets, a lot of engagement in providing the right information related to the vaccines. And of course, keep an eye on our EPP related website, because we are also going to run the campaign Vaccines Work, where we will be communicating science-based information, and people can trust what we are going to spread in our social media. So I would say Gavi, European Commission websites, national authorities' websites related to vaccines can be a good sources of information to make an informed decision on vaccines in general.
Yeah, thanks. And of course, also the EPP is going to continue to work on the topic of vaccination, because let's remember, this is our best ally in the fight against the pandemic. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you for the great work you are doing, both in the European Parliament and in the youth of the EPP. And to all our viewers, thank you for joining us for this special episode of EPP Family Talks. We hope to see you soon in one of the next episodes. And meanwhile, stay safe and remember that vaccines work. Bye.
Bye.